All right, welcome back to another episode of the RNA podcast. Today we had guest Jenna Mulligan on with us. She just won the national championship at Michigan for gymnastics. What do you think about her?
Yeah, it was a really fun one today. It's our national champion. We haven't had one yet. That's not something that you get to do every day, is interview a national champion, especially for us, just a small little podcast. But it was a great experience because, like we said, I had to talk about her with her COVID season, going from, maybe not even having a season to winning a national title, and, the mixed emotions that, ran through that. But it was a fun one.
Yeah, also it was our first female guest, so that is a little milestone in the RNA podcast.
Yeah, that's something that we'd wanted to do for a while, and what better one than to be Jenna? Just won a national title, so probably I'll just put it out there, probably our best athlete that we've had so far. Sorry to the other guys, but yeah, it was a good one with Jenna today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back to this episode of the RNA podcast. Today we have national champion gymnast Jenna Mulligan. Jenna, how are you doing today?
Hey, good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. We're really excited to have you on. Michigan just had a historic season. You were part of that, and we're excited to have you on to talk about how you guys had to fight for your season a little bit this year. It was a struggle with COVID-19 for every athlete, but especially you guys. And to go from that to winning a national championship, I'm sure was a great, experience for you guys.
Yeah, it was incredible. I would not have had this season any other way. But there were definitely some ups and downs during it, but our team persevered and came out successful.
Yeah, awesome. So before we kind of get into that national championship, historic kind of season with COVID and everything, will you tell us a little bit how you got into gymnastics? What made you want to do it and how you kind of pursued doing this?
Yeah, so I actually started gymnastics when I was 2 years old. My mom put me in because I had a lot of energy around the house and she was afraid I was going to hurt myself. And she was actually a gymnast, so she put me in as just a way to get rid of energy and didn't really care if I stuck with it, but I fell in love with it as soon as I started.
Yeah, it was the quote there I saw in your bio on the University of Michigan gymnast page. It said that you enjoyed the thrill of flying through the air and learning new skills. I think that's pretty funny. When did that happen? I mean, I'm sure at 2 years old it wasn't exactly all that. I kind of figured that at 2 maybe you were more interested in jumping into that foam pit or something like that, more along those lines. But who knows? I mean, I guess you're an elite athlete, so maybe you started at a young age.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember a lot of it when I was 2. You're right. Just jumping into the foam pit. But I couldn't really pinpoint exactly when it happened. It just kind of, as soon as I started having memories of my life, like I was already in gymnastics and it just kind of was so natural at that point. I couldn't really imagine doing anything different. But yeah, I definitely say it's an adrenaline rush, the closest thing you can get to flying. And it's just a thrill every time I get out there.
Cool. And then, so you decided to go to Michigan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You have any other schools in mind that you're looking for gymnastics, or were you pretty set on Michigan?
Michigan was always my number one whenever I started the recruiting process. Obviously looked at schools all across the country, but at the end of the day, I knew nothing would match to what Michigan could give me.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I even saw, in-state school was competing with you guys at nationals. I'm sure it was pretty cool to beat them there, especially something that's like about 45 minutes away, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly, when you're on the floor competing with your team, if I didn't know before who else was competing, I wouldn't have known who else was on the floor. 110% of your energy at meets goes to your team and is for your team. But yeah, definitely when I was a little girl, I was of course a Florida fan, like the local school, but I have so much respect for all the athletes that were there.
Sure, for sure. Now, so Jenny, we want to get into this a little bit. So I know at one point this year, the Big Ten, along with a lot of the other conferences, in the NCAA, were unsure about whether or not having a season because of COVID-19, protocol, everything. At one point, weren't you guys not going to have a season actually?
It was very back and forth before season actually started. There were definitely times when our coach would be like, "All right, guys, let's plan to have just like in our practice facility have like mini meets there, like for a worst case scenario." But we were very confident that we were gonna have something that resembled a season, whether it was traditional or not. But yeah, it was very back and forth until kind of last minute.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure, as an athlete, you guys were constantly getting COVID testing. I mean, I'm sure that, that was a struggle. I know that, we've talked to other athletes on here that are saying, they're getting tested, almost every single day. And it's a much different season than, I'm sure you're a freshman, so you haven't really experienced anything else, but, I'm sure it was pretty difficult for you guys.
Yeah, I'd say on average we COVID tested about 6 days a week. And having classes starting, for me, most days I started at 9 a.m. So it was, getting up at 8, going to get tested before I went to class and to practice. And it kind of became part of my daily routine, which is kind of weird to think about. But, like I said, it was all worth it in the end
Mhm.
because we won nationals, but it was definitely a process to get there.
Yeah. And what a way to cap off your freshman year too.
Definitely.
Yeah, so Jenna, I'm not really too familiar about the scoring of gymnastics, but when Riley and I were talking about this podcast, you mentioned that one of your teammates needed what, a 9-7 to kind of secure the win. Is that correct, Riley?
You needed a 9.85,
9-8.
Abbey High School, I believe that's
Mhm.
right, and she ended up getting a 9.925 on the beam. I'm sure that was, I mean, because that came down to the last minute. I mean, it was you guys in Oklahoma, and, it comes down to it. She needs that, and she scores above it. I'm sure I saw you guys, celebrating, but that had to have been so intense for you.
Yeah, I actually just got chills when you brought it up. So yeah, so gymnastics, the highest score you can get is a 10. And so basically every routine you start at a 10. And then the judges take away points for things that you do wrong. So getting a 9925 is basically perfect. And Abbey High School is definitely a rock on our team. We kind of refer to her as our secret weapon because she's not always in the spotlight, but when you need her, she is always there.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean that's pretty incredible. So, at one point, and athletes can talk about this sometimes, especially after a big championship run. Was there any point, in the season, maybe it was before the season even started when you first got on campus, when you realized you're like, wow, this team really could be special? Because Michigan has never won a national championship. This is your first ever. So, I'm sure you guys, know what it takes to be successful, but this is your first one. So, at what point in the season did you kind of maybe think to yourself, like, we can maybe make a run this year?
Yeah. I mean, obviously every team comes around once, just because like seniors are constantly graduating, freshmen are constantly coming in. But coming in as a freshman, like even my first day in the gym, it was like, wow, like team 45, like this team's pretty cool. But I'd say when I really knew was after our mid-season COVID pause, if you want to call it that. We just came back in the gym after those 2 weeks off, and it was like we never left. And I was like, wow, like this team can really do it. And we did. And it was something really special for sure.
Yeah, and not only that, but the team that you defeated in nationals, Oklahoma, had won 4 of the last 7 years. So it wasn't like you guys just went in there, a bunch of underdogs. You guys beat, the top of the top in gymnastics.
Yeah, I don't really think about it like that. But now that you say it, it's kind of true. Gymnastics is one of those sports where you can be ranked number one, But if your gymnastics is off that day, like it can be anyone's game, which is one thing that I think is so cool and unique about gymnastics, that everyone is so talented, everyone is so just amazing at gymnastics, but it can be anyone's day at any time, and it's super cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned Team 45. What does that number represent to you?
So Team 45 is what was this past team. It was the 45th team in Michigan's history of having gymnastics teams. So going into my sophomore year will be Team 46. So it just kind of counts up, and yeah.
Oh, cool.
Gotcha. Yeah. So now moving forward, I guess, in the future, you'll be a sophomore next year.
Mhm.
How much of your team is coming back? Now, are you guys going to be graduating some big time seniors next year, or is it going to be kind of just, next man up, or are you guys, going to continue to, make a title push again?
Yeah, so none of our seniors are coming back for fifth years. So we're losing a very, very talented senior class, three girls. Lauren Farley was one of our big beam girls throughout all 4 years at Michigan. So we're losing a solid beam routine, but as our head coach always says, what's really special about this team is we have depth. And even though only 6 girls are competing, we have 13, 14, 15 like routines that can hit any day. So, it'll definitely be weird in the gym without our seniors there, but we have a great freshman class coming in, and I know that we're all going to rally together again and just be a great team again.
Yeah, gymnastics is a sport where, I've heard, from a young age too, is you guys are in the gym constantly. Like I know most gymnasts, a lot of them have to go through homeschool just so they can be in the gym all the time. That's not something that you did. So you were kind of lucky because you got to experience, real life in high school, but also at the same time, you were an elite gymnast. I know that I'm sure a lot of the girls you're competing against were, maybe stay at home in the gym, 6 hours a day, 5 hours a day. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is one thing that I never wanted to do. Like I wanted to go to high school, be around people, have somewhat of a normal experience growing up. Um, just I think balance is really important just in all aspects of life. I would go from school to the gym, train for 4 hours, and then if they're on Friday nights, it was a football game, I'd show up at halftime after practice and still get like that little bit of just hanging out with my friends, like being a kid. And I think it was just really important for like my development growing up.
For sure, for sure. No, and every athlete I think goes through that. Is there's a lot of sacrifices, but I think that gymnastics is even more so. And I think that what people don't realize is how much you guys are actually putting time into the gym, because a lot of sports are out there for 2 3 hour practices, but some of you girls are in there for all day on the weekends. Like you said, going to school. You're there for 3 4 hours because it's a really difficult sport. I don't think people give enough credit. There's not very many people you could get off the street that could just go do a backflip, and you guys are sitting there doing it on a balance beam. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of practice and hard work, what every sport does. But like you said, the one unique thing about gymnastics is we have different components. So like every girl trains all 4 events, where like a kicker for a football team like only has to kick. So it's different in that aspect, but it's challenging and it's fun when you succeed and get what you want out of it.
All right, so some fun stuff here. What are some pre-meet superstitions?
Okay, for me, a big one is I have to use the same hair ties at every meet. Because obviously, we do the big gymnastics buns for every meet, but yeah, towards the end of the season, I had 2 hair ties that broke, and so I like tied them together in order to be able to still use them.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
every athlete has their superstitions, and they don't want to stray away from them. So that's definitely
Mhm.
understandable. What about some pre-meet food? Are there any specific things that you want to eat, before you go out there?
Yeah, so everyone on our team has their own little thing. Like some girls, they have to have like pretzels, or other girls, applesauce. That's a big one for me. So at meets, we have a 15-minute touch warm up on every event. And then we go back into the locker room, change, and then go back out for the actual competition. So my thing is applesauce before the 15-minute touch, and then the Gatorade Energy Chews before the meet. And Abbey High School is just the opposite. She does Gatorade chews before the 15-minute touch and applesauce before the competition. So her and I are constantly in the locker room before every meet. Like, do you have your applesauce? Do you have your shoes? And yeah, it's funny.
That is pretty funny, actually. And you guys can have a little bit of fun with your superstitions with your other teammates, because when you're there all year long, you realize what everybody's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. So Jenna, a lot of people watching this have not experienced a national championship. What are the emotions like after you win a national championship? How does the school react? And how do you guys feel? And what's the goal for next year?
Yeah, I'd say everyone reacts a little bit differently. In the moment, it's just so surreal. It doesn't even feel like it's actually happening. And it definitely took a few days to kind of set in and be like, wait, we just did that. But coming home to our like practice facility, and there were about 100 people outside like greeting us when we got back. It was almost like a movie. It was like you grow up seeing it happen on like TV and stuff like that, but it's like actually being the one there is so crazy. And it's just, you realize how many people, like me as a little girl, obviously I looked up to a bunch of gymnasts, and it's just crazy like how the roles have flipped, and like knowing that now these little girls are looking up to my team and thinking the same things I was thinking as a little girl. And it's it's just, I can't even put it into words. It's a crazy feeling, and I'm very thankful that I can feel it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably pretty crazy for you to think about. Like you said, there's little girls up there that are looking up to you guys, on the Michigan gymnastics team. But you were that girl one day. You were that little, 4 or 5-year-old girl that was in the gym, just kind of getting into the sport. And now, you're Jenna Mulligan, who just won a national championship. And I think that's pretty crazy to flip, because you're still that little kid. But in reality, there's so many people that are looking up to you guys now because you just won a national title.
Mm-hmm.
Probably hard to switch that in your brain, because you know I think people realize you're just Jenna, like, but at the same time you did just win a national championship.
Yeah, a big thing in gymnastics is like people say like you're doing it for like the little girl that you were. And it's so true, because looking back at pictures and videos of like us doing gymnastics when, like you said, we were 4 or 5 years old, just kind of learning how to flip and being like, to come from that to here, it's just unbelievable, and something that I wish everyone could experience. And it's a great feeling.
For sure, Jenna, for sure. Now,
It's super cool to see, winning that national championship and inspiring that younger generation, because it's going to make so many fans out of just Michigan, just because of the national championship you won, and little gymnast girls are going to be able to look up to you guys, like you said. So that is really cool to see.
have you talked to your coaching staff about the ring? Like, have you guys had any input of what you want it to look like, how big it's going to be, anything like that?
So for us, it's mainly the senior class each year that designs the rings for the team. We all obviously have some input, but it's just kind of been a tradition for as long as I know that the senior class designs the rings. We just got sized for them, and everyone kind of picked what they wanted to put inside the ring, because that's like an individual decision and not like a team decision. So I guess stay tuned to see what the rings look like, because I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, that's actually going to be exciting. You're going to have to show us when you end up getting those. That's going to be really cool.
I definitely will.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna show people, that's for sure. I mean, and you deserve it. You might as well, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to wear that around campus once everything starts opening up and in-person classes start happening. Uh, that's a cool flex to show to your school a little bit.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely will be. And now, do you know? I mean, I'm sure nobody really knows at this point, but are you guys going to be, kind of opened a little bit back up at Michigan next year, or is it still kind of up in the air?
As far as I know, it's going to be a little more opened up. At least the athletic campus will be, just because all of the athletes have gotten their vaccines, because athletics offered it to us earlier in April. So I know at least like our team bubbles will have a few less restrictions than they did this past season. Um, I actually have a few in-person classes in the fall, which I didn't have any this past year. So things are definitely looking up.
That's good. That's good. That's exciting. And you'll be able to wear that ring to some of those classes, won't you? That'll be fun.
Yeah, it might make a few appearances here and there.
Yeah. All right, Jenna. Well, and we can start wrapping up here, but we're excited to have you on, like we said before. But we want to thank you, and maybe to wrap up, you can talk about a couple goals you have for the next couple of years in Michigan.
Yeah, so some of my athletic goals, just like get into more lineups and more competitions as like the years go on. I think going up and training over the summers is going to be very helpful just to get, that much more instruction and help from these like top tier coaches that we have. And then academically, the plan is to graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Movement Science, and then also have completed the pre-med track and go to medical school. And then I'm also graduating with a minor in Spanish.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. And one more thing I want to ask is, I know gymnastics is really big in the Olympics. Is that something that you'd like to do after college, possibly?
Probably not for me. My main goal growing up was making it to a D1 school for gymnastics. Most of the Olympians, that track starts before college, like Riley was saying earlier, with the homeschooling and all that. And that just wasn't really something I wanted for myself. So after college, I plan on joining the real world, as scary as that sounds.
Jenna, one more thing before you go. I did want to ask, you mentioned the summer training up in Michigan. How was the winter up in Michigan? Because you're a Florida girl, so I'm sure that it was much different this year than what you're used to. Being able to go to the beach in December is not something that you can do up in Michigan.
Yeah, definitely not. Everyone told me that this winter wasn't a terrible one, which is a little scary because I thought it was really cold. We didn't deal with a ton of snow this winter, which was kind of nice. But definitely very cold, and I was not used to that. But the big parkas that Nike gave us helped a lot.
Yeah. I've gone through that up here in Pennsylvania. It's not fun. We had snow like last week. I was like, what? It's April. Like, what is going on? Yeah,
we had the same thing, like end of April snow. It's like it was 80 degrees last week. It was weird.
Yeah, no, for sure. But anyways, Jenna, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you coming and tell us your story, for Team 45, and good luck in the future at Michigan.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know that